There's only one multinational publishing house which was left to reject me, and I boarded a Shatabdi from Chandigarh to Delhi, landed up in their office. It's a huge multinational publishing house. I land up at the doorstep and then say, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And I'm telling them that it's been 3.5 months. I sent my submission, nothing happened. And they said, "You can't." So the moment the receptionist heard my voice, she had a face palm moment. You have arrived here as well, because she could connect my face to the voice.
Calling on the phone a lot. Yeah.
And she would keep the phone down.
Right.
I said, "Today I'm going to speak to the editor." So that's my determination or stupidity.
Right.
Somebody passes that space and then she says, "What is this ruckus all about?" And then she explains, "No, this gentleman had come. He had been calling and harassing us."
Wow.
I'm thrown out of the security escorts me
On
out.
that day, you were thrown out of the office?
On that day, like
Crazy.
after that 20 minutes of drama.
Yeah.
And before I was thrown out, I just said, "If you have rejected my work, please give it back to me." And I said, "But why?" And I said, "Because I fear that book would become a bestseller one day and somebody else will steal my manuscript, and it would be one of you. Because it's a Punjabi blood, he has to say something for the heck of it."
Correct.
I said, "One of you is going to put your name and make it your story, give it back to me." And then Pat came the reply that, "You know what we do with the manuscript which we reject? We throw them in a dustbin. So if you really want, go look out in the dustbins of Delhi and you would find." And this is humiliating for me. And I didn't know how to react to that.
Damn.
Somebody's telling you, "What? You don't even know how to communicate." And you're talking about you being a writer. How many books have you read? Absolutely nothing. Every word they spoke was bang on right. So I didn't have any, counter to that. I stepped out and I remember I was in tears, and that day it was raining. And because it was raining, nobody could see my tears. I remember this exact line. And 2 hours later, I was on a Haryana Roadways bus going back to Chandigarh, disappointed, and there was mud on my shoe, flies sitting all over me. Somebody texting me, "What happened, that last hope?" It was crashed. But being me, I landed up in Delhi NCR one more time. I happened to be in this place called Connaught Place for the very first time. And I saw, okay, there are books being sold on footpath. And I thought, okay, maybe my books may not have the fate to be in the air-conditioned shelves of Oxford and Crossword.
Right.
How about I ask this person? And then I went there and I tapped his shoulder. I said, "Bhaiya, if I give you 5 copies, will you be kind enough to keep?" And then he looks up all the way at me and then he says, "Distributor ho tum?" He was a Bihari. I said, "No, author hu." And then he says, "कैसा ही author होगा जो खुद अपनी किताबें बेच रहा है?" And that was he didn't say it, but his eyes
thought it. Yeah.
I said, "सिर्फ 5 किताब रखना है मेरे को, रखने दोगे?" And then he said, "अरे जाओ ना बाबू, बोनी का टाइम है, क्यों वेस्ट करो टाइम? कुछ खरीदना है तो बताओ." I said, "I'll buy the books, but can you just keep 5 books? I'm not asking you for the money.
Right.
You just keep it. Let's see if you are able to sell it or not."
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, he said, rather than indulging in a verbal conflict with me, he said, "Okay, you can get them and then keep them, as long as you're not asking me to pay you back. If somebody buys, I'll do that."
Consignment pe rakh raha hu main. Right.
He was the very first guy who said yes to me after 20 publishers said, 20 people said no to me. He was the very first person. And I celebrated that. And my entrepreneur mind was like, I'm standing in the M block of this place called Connaught Place. There is one footpath bookseller. How many booksellers are there in this complex? There were 20.
Right.
If 20 multiplied by 500 copies, and out of Connaught Place, how many such Connaught Place would exist in Delhi NCR? And I live in Chandigarh. What if these are my game plan? These are my ideas. In my mind, I was setting up my retailer.
Yeah.
So I thought 500 copies is what I have to publish. And then I thought, this is my retailer side. Let's now think about the production side. All of these books that I've been reading in school, NCERT, Tata Magrol's, kahin to publish hoti hongi, where exactly? What are this? Who publishes them? Who are these printers? Yeah. Can I set up my own printer and then churn it out and then bring it to him? Let's see if that works. And I will go out on Orkut and tell people, those footpath people out there, I will do some stunt that people would come and buy.
So self-publishing even before the word existed also.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Wow. This was my game plan. And then I figured out, went online, checked, where are these school, college books published? And then I heard about this place called Daryaganj. Now, this is somebody who's new to Delhi. मैं दिल्ली में 2-3 बार आया हूँ बस.
Right.
And I landed up in Daryaganj. It's the Daryaganj of 2007-8 was a paper town from a Shah Rukh Khan's movie. Everywhere there was paper. There were rims coming. There were rickshaw pullers bringing those pages and
Chaudi Bazaar and all that.
everything
right,
was like. I said, okay. There were so many pages on street,
Yeah.
and there were tire marks of scooter or the rickshaw pullers. I felt okay. I have reached this place, and I look around. There are so many printers, and I said, which is the smallest printer? The reason being, वो मुझे सबसे कम charge करेगा.
सही बात है.
So let me just go to the smallest printer.
With the low MOQ also, right?
So and then he says yes. I said I need to get books printed. And then he says which publishing house? I said I'm an author. And then this is a 60 years old man.
Right.
Is like taken aback. No author has come. Everybody comes by a publisher. You must be mistaken. You are with some publisher. Maybe you are a publisher as well as you are wanting to publish your own book. I said,
Right.
no, I'm an author. I don't know publishing. And my first statement was, every publishing house has rejected me. Let's not waste time. I will pay you. You will give me 500 copies. And then the way I was talking, he said, and she said, beta, better 2 minutes. You want to have some water? And then I had some water. And then I said, why do you want 500 copies? I said, because I want my books to be out. He said, do you know, nobody gives an order of 100, 500 copies. They're in thousands.
Yeah.
I said, so you are not going to print them. Can you charge me more for these 500 copies? But my estimate is 500 copies. Anyway, so to cut the long story short, his idea was that if a book is what you want to publish, and if all the big publishing houses have rejected you, why are you not looking at the small publishing houses?
Right.
And I said, where are those small publishing houses? Because they don't exist on internet.
No.
He said, I will tell you, there are thousands of publishing houses in this country, but they're very tiny. Nobody looks at them. He happened to mention a couple of them to me. He also told me that, you spend money in getting a good editor, let him or her polish your work, and
Right.
then you reached out to these publishers.
Right.
Tell me the genre of your book. And then said romance. I said, and then he heard my entire story. And he could sense the pain. And then he said to me that these are 2-3 publishing houses who are publishing romance, and their books sell in Delhi University. So your market should be Delhi University. I said, okay, fair enough. So I'll do the maths. I'll go back, figure out who can do what.
Sure.
So that was one day wherein I thought the day I will sell 500 copies, I will call myself a best-selling author. And today that book has sold more than 1 million copies.
Crazy.
And the fun fact is, 3.5 years later,
I'm sure you love this little tip. If you want to watch the full episode, click on the link below and watch the whole episode.